I'm digging these out of there.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We're 10 minutes late getting started. We got a late start in pre-council. Thank you for your patience. Welcome to all of you who are here in council chambers, as well as those who are watching on HCTV. We begin tonight with our invocation and pledge of allegiance led by Council Member Bob Hurley. Would you stand, please?
Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day and for many blessings bestowed upon us. We thank you for the privilege as free Americans to attend this meeting and conduct city business. We ask that this council be granted wisdom and knowledge in all our decisions. Ask all this in your name.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We're ready to move now to the consent agenda. We have 3 items on the consent agenda. Gentlemen, I am in line for a motion. Councilmember Averett.
Mayor, I make a motion we approve the consent agenda.
Councilmember Markham.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. If you will register your votes. That passes by unanimous vote. Item number 4 is a public hearing, and here to introduce the public hearing, Mr. James Pliska.
Thank you, Mayor, City Council members, citizens of Haltom City. This item is conditional use 028-01 to conduct a public hearing and consider the application of Mr. Sean Sierra for a conditional use permit to operate an auto sales facility on lots 15 and 16 Johnson and McGinnis subdivision, and an auto paint and body shop on lots 13 and 14 Johnson and McGinnis subdivision, located on the south side of Northeast 28th Street, containing approximately 1.4738 acres of land locally known as 4010 Northeast 28th Street. The accompanying ordinance is Ordinance O-2002-029-015 for this case, and its consideration and/or action regarding the approval of an ordinance amending Ordinance Number O-097-01515 as amended, the comprehensive zoning ordinance of the City of Haltom City, Texas, for a conditional use permit to allow for an auto sales facility on lots 15 and 16 Johnson and McGinnis subdivisions, and for an auto paint and body shops on lot 13 and 14 Johnson and McGinnis subdivision in accordance with Ordinance 097-01515 zoning ordinance section 26 conditional uses, containing approximately, again, 1.4738 acres of land located on the south side of Northeast 28th Street, and again locally known as 4010 Northeast 28th, and this is the first reading of that ordinance. The applicant is requesting a conditional use permit with site plan approval in order to continue to operate an auto sales facility and an auto paint and body shop on M2 heavy industrially zoned property. Sierra Motors operates the auto sales facility on 15 and 16, that's lots 15 and 16, and Touch of Glass operates an auto paint and body shop located on lots 13 and 14. I list for you again the existing zoning and the land uses, the surrounding adjacent zoning and land uses, thoroughfare access, a brief analysis. Legal notice for this public hearing was published in the Fort Worth Star-Telegram on June 14th. Property owner notifications of all property owners within 200 feet were mailed out by staff June 14th, 2002. 17 property owners were notified. Staff received 0 in opposition and 0 in favor. A brief recommendation is that the Planning and Zoning Commission voted unanimously to recommend approval to the City Council of this conditional use permit with site plan approval to allow an auto paint and body shop on 13 and 14 Johnson and McGinnis subdivision and an auto sales facility on lots 15 and 16 Johnson and McGinnis subdivision at their meeting on July 9th, 2002. This case was passed with the stipulation that a landscape barrier be constructed between these lots particularly 14 and 15, to separate the uses on the site, and that the existing fence be moved to the south.
Okay, you have heard the introduction of this subject by Mr. Pliska. I'll open the public hearing at this time. Councilmember Fowler, I have your light on. Did I fail to turn that off a moment ago?
I guess you did, sir.
Okay, thank you. Members of the council, any questions for Mr. Pliska before we proceed with this public hearing? Okay, there being none, Mr. Sierra, are you in the audience tonight? Would you like to address the council, or would you just like to be available to answer any questions the council might have? Okay, thank you, Mr. Sierra. Members of the audience, anyone here wishing to speak either for or against Mr. Sierra's application for this conditional use permit? Okay, there being none, I'll close the public hearing at this time and we move to the corresponding motion. I'm in line for a motion regarding this application. Councilmember Williams?
Mr. Mayor, you going to allow the council to have some discussion on this before we do that, or do you want to go ahead and have the motion and go from there?
Go ahead with discussion.
Okay.
Yes, and then we'll call for a motion.
Okay, I'm sorry. Mr. Pliska, I've got a question about the landscaping separating the two properties.
Yes, sir.
Have y'all discussed and decided what that landscaping will be and come to an agreement other than just landscaping, or?
The emphasis of discussion, that's a good point, at the planning and zoning was some sort of hedge type landscaping to clearly distinguish the two uses.
Is it going to be like a blocking, a hedge that will separate the two completely, or?
I haven't discussed that with the applicant, but that was inferred at the P&Z. Yes, sir. In terms of like red tips or something along those lines.
Would the applicant be in favor of the red tips? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Councilmember Fowler?
Mr. Mayor, I'd just like to ask, will this being first reading, I guess, we all have something conclusive before second reading?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Also, is there a provision, Mr. Pliska, for continued maintenance of these?
Of the landscaping?
Yes, sir.
Absolutely.
Of all?
In section 34 of the 98 ordinance, it does state that it has to keep it in a presentable fashion, of good condition.
Okay.
And
Is
well
that all, for
maintained.
all our C5, for everything?
Correct.
Okay.
Any further comments by the council before I entertain a motion? Okay, there being none, I'm in line for a motion regarding ordinance 02000-029-15. Councilmember Williams?
Thank you, Mayor. I make a motion that we approve ordinance number 0-2002-029-15.
Have a motion. Councilmember Jennings.
That's for a second with the stipulation that the required screening between 14 and 15 and the moving of the fence as requested by P&Z also be addressed between now and second reading. Thank you.
Councilmember Williams,
I will
that,
amend my motion. to
Okay.
adopt that, yes.
Councilmember Henderson, did you have?
No,
Okay.
Mayor.
Any further discussion on the motion and the second? Okay, there being none, if you'll register your vote, and that passes by unanimous vote. Item number 5 is a public hearing as well, and Mr. Pliska, if you'd like to introduce that one too.
Thank you, Mayor, City Council members, citizens of Haltom City. This is CU 005-02, another conditional use permit, to conduct a public hearing and consider the application of Mr. Guy Gene Levine for a conditional use permit to operate an auto paint and body shop on property zoned M2 Heavy Industrial District on Lot 1, Block 1, Holder Edition, located on the west side of Denton Highway, which is US Highway 377, containing approximately 1 acre of land locally known as 5521 Denton Highway. I also have the accompanying ordinance, O2002-03015, consideration and/or action regarding approval of an ordinance, amending ordinance O097-01515 as amended, the comprehensive zoning ordinance of the City of Haltom City for a conditional use permit to allow for an auto paint and body shop in accordance with the ordinance, zoning ordinance, section 26, conditional uses on Lot 1, Block 1, Holder Edition, containing approximately 1 acre of land located on the west side of Denton Highway, and again locally known as 5521 Denton Highway, and of course, this is the first reading. The applicant is requesting a conditional use permit with site plan approval in order to operate an auto paint and body shop on the site. Guy's Paint and Body is doing business on the site. I list for you the existing zoning and land uses, the adjacent zoning and land uses, thoroughfare access, the reason for him needing a conditional use permit. Legal notice regarding the public hearing was published in the Fort Worth Star-Telegram on June 28, 2002. Property owner notification for all properties within 200 feet of the site were mailed out again on June 28, 2002. 11 properties were notified by staff. Staff received 0 in opposition and 1 in favor. I also formally submit the applicant's site plan, the surrounding property owner notice information, and a GIS aerial of the property.
Thank you, Mr. Pliska. This is a public hearing, and I'll open the public hearing at this time. We'll start out by asking members of the council any questions you have for Mr. Pliska regarding Mr. Levine's request. Councilmember Henderson.
Thank you, Mayor. James, this is the second or third time this particular item's come in front of us. We had mentioned in pre-council that we just recently ticketed this individual for selling of an automobile in his facility. I'm going to have a hard time voting in favor of this because this individual is, he's giving you a hard time. He's this come in front of us 2 or 3 times. Have you heard from him today? Is he supposed to be here this evening?
Yes, sir. He's
is he
in the
here?
audience at this time.
Was he?
Right.
Is this him right here?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Right.
Would you? Can he come to the microphone, Mayor?
Yes. You are Mr. Levine?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Guy Levine, if you would give us your address for the record.
5521 Denton Highway.
Okay.
This is my second time. It's supposed to be my second time. The first time I was supposed to be at the meeting, I was in the hospital. I was not notified till that day of the meeting, but I was in the hospital. That's why I couldn't make it. If I would have been notified 2 or 3 days in advance of what day the meeting was going to be, while I was at the hospital, my wife could have called you, my son could have called you, told you I wouldn't have made it. But I couldn't make it. I was in the hospital, and I have proof with me.
Okay, that's fine. Why are you still trying to sell cars?
That is my
at the lot?
personal vehicle. I have to sell my vehicle. Since they took my car lot away, I'm losing revenue. I have to sell my truck. That's my personal truck.
And you're selling, that's your personal truck you're
Yes,
selling?
sir, and I had the receipt and got pictures and everything of it. And I was told by James that I can sell my own personal vehicle.
Okay.
So
No further questions,
I'm not trying to do anything illegal. I
No
just
further
have to
questions.
sell it.
Comment on that. Go ahead, comment.
Go ahead.
Mr. Levine, no further questions, I don't think, right now, but we will give you an opportunity to address the council in just a moment. At this particular portion or this juncture of our discussion, just asking for members of the council if they have questions specific for Mr. Pliska, and we'll have plenty of time for you to say whatever you need to, as well as field any questions we might have. Councilmember Williams.
I think you have a pretty good idea, Mayor. Let's hear from Mr. Levine first, and if you'd like to address the council.
If I could
And-
comment on what he addressed.
If you could go ahead and do that and then refer
Yes,
to
sir.
him, please.
The day Mr. Levine delivered the site plan, I knew Mr. Levine had his truck out front. And I encouraged Mr. Levine that although it was okay for him to sell this, it was not a good idea to do it at this time. He had been denied his request for auto sales facility. It makes it look like it's an auto sales facility. And I encouraged him to not display that truck for sale. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Levine, Councilmember Williams, point of privilege, asked for you to go ahead and address the council at this time. You may begin.
Well, I'm just saying, he did state to my attorney that it isn't against the law, just, sell my own personal vehicle on my property. And the only reason I'm selling is I'm losing revenue. They're already repossessing my motorhome because I wasn't here at the last council meeting because I was in the hospital. I wasn't notified till that day. I came down here the next day after I had that accident and showed the lady across the hall my face, what was wrong, and y'all didn't send a letter out till Friday afternoon. I didn't get it till Monday. My mail don't run between 1:30 and 3. At 3:15, I was in the hospital. But if I knew, a week prior to this date, I could have, my wife could have called you, my son could have called you. My son had to come to the hospital, get the keys to lock the shop up, because I knew I wasn't going to be out of the hospital at 5 o'clock. Otherwise, I would have been here. That's the only reason I wasn't here, because I was in the hospital.
If we could, Mr. Levine, let's move forward now. Your point is well taken, that you were in the hospital and not able to be here. You have an application here before us for a conditional use permit to operate an auto paint and body shop on property that's zoned M2 that does require a conditional use permit to have a paint and body shop. Would you like to address the council on what you're asking the council to do at this time?
I've been there for 10 years. I've never had a problem with the city, so I don't know where the problem is. Keep the body shop there.
Councilmember Williams, you have a...
Yes, sir, I'll go on my... Mr. Levine, you said you were in the hospital when you got this letter. Do I have this case mixed up with another case? Because we had looked at one of these cases and we were informed that your mother had passed away in Missouri or somewhere.
No, that was my mother-in-law. Okay, that was for the P&Z meeting. That was my mother-in-law that passed away.
No, that was for a council meeting, I think, that we were...
No, sir.
Yes, because I granted to table it for you because I was told.
I knew there was a death in the family, and I did call in.
So now, at the council meeting, there was a death in the family?
If that was a council meeting, I thought it was P&Z. Okay, well, okay. But I did call Mr. Pileski and tell him that...
It went 2 times before council. First time was tabled because of your death in the family, and the second time because of the injuries.
Oh, okay, well...
I personally asked the table it the first time because you weren't here, and I didn't think it would be fair to address this item with you not being here. And Mr. Paliska's office had contacted us and told us that your mother-in-law had passed away out of state, and you had to go at the last moment. And I'm sorry you weren't here at that meeting. Do you hold an automobile dealer's license for that place there?
Yes, sir. Been there for 12 years.
What name is it under?
Hawks Auto Sales.
Hawks Auto Sales. Okay.
I mean, I've been there for 12 years, never had a bit of problem.
Are you Hawks Auto Sales, Guy Levine? Is that the owner of Hawks Auto Sales?
I'm the Claude McNabb's the owner. I went blank. I represent the city, the car lot.
Where's Mr. McNabb at?
He's out of town.
For the day or?
No, he works out of state. He goes around construction, these fires and apartments and motels and whatnot. He's a contractor.
And he's the automobile dealer?
Yes, sir. License under his name. I'm just an agent.
Okay.
Been buying and selling cars under his license for 12 years, 13 years.
So if we got a local directory here and looked in, it would say Hawks Auto Sales.
Hawks Auto Sales and Equipment.
Will you give me a phone directory?
Sure.
And I'll go ahead and refer to the rest of the council while I look at that.
Councilmember Fowler, I believe you were next, and then Councilmember Jennings.
I just have one question, Mr. Levine. Having the opportunity to go through this while I was serving on the P&Z, I've been fortunate enough to go through the complete process with you. You and I had spoken, and I specifically asked you, and I just want to make sure nothing's changed at this point. Is Guy's Paint and Body your primary source of income at that property?
I'm not going to say primary, no, sir, because we both came in the car lot and the body shop came at the same time.
No, sir, because that night you specifically said that it was...
He said that, I didn't.
No, I asked you that night, Mr. Levine. For sake of argument, I'd ask you just so that, because we had spoken, if there was one of the two, which one would you, which one's your means of livelihood? And you had stated that the car lot was your primary source of income.
The body shop, I've been doing body work since '69. The car lot was an extra income.
Okay. Well, that's all. I just want to make sure nothing's changed. It hasn't changed since then, has it?
No, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilmember Jennings.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have 2 questions. One for staff. We're in the process of doing all the C5 zoning. Was Hawks Auto Sales contacted during the process of the C5 zoning?
No, sir.
Do we have a CO for Hawks Auto Sales anywhere on
Now,
record?
I checked the COs for his facility, and he has 2 COs for auto paint and body facilities for 2 buildings.
But nowhere for auto sales?
No, sir.
Okay. Mr. Levine, one question for you. You mentioned that you were selling your own personal vehicle.
Yes, sir.
Or, what are you going to do for a vehicle after you sell this? You're going to go buy another one?
I bought a car.
Bought another car?
I'm selling a truck.
Okay. Any plans to sell that car from that location?
No, I just replaced the car for the truck. I know I get more out of the truck.
Okay.
Don't need the truck anymore.
That's all right now, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, Councilmember Williams, I think.
I'm going to
you
have
asked-
him point out Hawks Auto Sales and that. Is that a current directory, Mr. Pliska?
Not there either.
2001 issue, August 2001, so it would be correct.
And I do have a certificate of occupancy for Hawks Auto Sales down at my office. I pay $90 for it every year. I do have the one for the fire department every year.
Mr. Langham, do you have a record of that?
I see a lot.
You would have possibly a fire code permit for the tank body shop. I'm not aware of anything.
Nothing in there.
I do.
We would not issue a fire code permit.
You also would not issue a CO for it either, would you?
No,
That would go through?
I don't think there is a CO.
Thank you.
I'm sorry that we're having this.
Oh, that's fine, because
yeah.
you cannot have both uses of paint and body and auto sales on the same lot.
I know
That's
this
just
may be
a
a
fact
lot.
of life, and,
This might be a little out of order, but this is the only way we're going to get to it.
right.
I like you, we're in the same business, and we're not competitors in business, so I don't think we have a conflict there. I have a CO at my property from 1983 that says the name of my business and the address, and that's one time's all I got that CO. I don't give a yearly. I think I pay a once a year, like a $30 fire inspection, because I have a garage next door. It's not a it's just like a storage garage, but the fire department comes through. They stop by, they walk through, they check the fire extinguishers, they check the wiring, they check. Is this right? Would you like to address the podium?
I have that I have that with me.
Could I see that while he addresses?
Yes. Councilman Williams, to answer your question, we typically issue an annual fire code permit, which is a $30 fee. We can issue up to 3 of those permits for a maximum of $90, depending on the type of hazard. Has really nothing to do with the occupancy classification. It just addresses the type of hazard that might be at that location. A CO, or a certificate of occupancy, addresses the type of business or type of operation within that facility.
Councilmember Williams, if you would read that, or
Yes, sir.
tell us what you have in your
read it.
hand.
In my hand, and Mr. Levine's gave me, it says City of Haltom City. It's official. It's the permit they send you after they make the code. It says fire code permit, and it says permit required. Business name Hawk Auto Sales. 5521 Denton Highway, and the date issue is the 4th month, 12th day, 2002. F3 flammable and combustible liquid, repair shop, spraying and dipping. Expires March of 2003, and it's signed by the Fire Marshal Charlie Langham. Why would we have Hawks Auto Sale on that?
Well, the only answer I could give you there would have to, I would have to research that, but my guess is that he came in and applied at some time with that name, or he could have issued that name to the inspector and they wrote that on the inspection form, which could have been mishandled through our administrative offices.
I'm glad you said that, because when they come out and ask mine, they ask me how the CO is.
Exactly.
And I either produce them the CO or I tell them. And they've been doing it for 20 years, so it's the last 4 or 5 years they pretty well knew who they were talking to
Right.
when they came in. But
And I know Mr. Levine has been there for some time, but I also know that he initially went into that business for paint and body, auto paint and body.
Mr. Levine,
I'm
just
not
to
sure
be
when.
just to be real honest with you, as far as your business goes, and I will stand up here and fight with every gentleman up here. We don't want to put anybody out of business, but you have a very unique piece of property where you're at. It's very shallow and it's very deep. And should there be a fire erupt at your place, it's a very hard place to fight a fire. And I don't have a problem with you running a paint and body shop and doing your auto repair. Your facilities really aren't set up for a used car lot. We had some citizens come before us about a year and a half ago, maybe a little longer. They were not wanting used car lots and paint and body shops to be able to operate out of the same property. And when we did our code rewrite, I think it was 98, that is the way that we rewrote the code, that you'd have to have one or the other. You couldn't have both. And I understand, I know you've been there a long time as Guys Paint and Body because I've passed it for years. I don't have a problem with you going in as Guys Paint and Body. I had the problem in the phone book there. I don't find a Hawks Auto Sales, and state law says that if you're going to have an automobile dealership, that you have to have your name in the phone book under that name. Now, you know, if it was Guys Paint and Body and that's the way the automobile dealer's license, you know, if it said Guys Paint and Body and that was also, for instance, Guy Levine, you could just use the word name Guy Levine and that would be a legal name for an automobile dealership. But apparently Guy Levine Paint and Body is the name of your paint and body shop. Hawks Auto Sales is a complete different company. I don't find it anywhere in the phone book in the white pages or the yellow pages. So that leads me to believe that there is no Hawks Auto Sales legally listed at the 5900 block you give me on Denton Highway. Now, is this true or
Only I can think is Claude McNabb probably just never renewed the ad in the yellow page. I'm assuming. I don't know. I do have a. I will bring in the CO. I don't know if it was marked down here or not, showing the CO.
In defense of Mr. Levine, this is a annual fire inspection from our company service inspections. They are required to check off if there is a current CO. They did check that off, that there was one posted. Whether or not it said Hawks Auto Sales or Guys Paint and Body, I'll have to do some research on that. And
Mr. Levine, can you make a living as Guys Paint and Body? I don't know if that's a fair question, but I know where the economy is right now. You know, I can't make a living as Big John's Motor Company. Its business is terrible. But, you know, I know that there's a lot more people needing their cars repaired than there are people wanting to buy cars.
I understand that. There's a lot more people getting laid off that can't afford their deductibles neither, and they're not fixing their cars. That's why you see a bunch of wrecked cars. I'm asking if the car lot can still exist, and that's, you know, give me at least. I have pictures here where I was going to do some remodeling on the building. All I need is room to park 3 cars. That's all I was asking for.
I wish I could do that, but with the codes, the way they're written,
I understand.
we're not allowed to do that. There's another gentleman down 28th Street that has a similar deal, and he had to pick between the two, whether he wanted to go in the car business or wanted to go in the paint and body business. Well, he had made a living for 30 years in the paint and body, and the car business was just a hobby or just an extra income as you've been using it. Your unique piece of property that you got kind of prohibits you from doing that. The case that we just approved prior to this was 4 different lots, but they're separate lots. And that's the way, you know, the person was like, and I wish there was something I could do for you in that. I would be in favor of letting you have the conditional use permit to operate your paint and body shop and continue your business like you've been doing. As far as Hawks Auto Sales, in my opinion, I don't think they exist at your address. They may on paper. I don't know where the dealer, I don't have any idea to check the dealer's license to see if there's actually a dealer's license for that. But according to our codes that we have now, you can operate with a conditional use permit as Guys Paint and Body at that address. You cannot operate Hawks Auto Sales.
I understand that.
Would you be willing to operate under Guys Paint and Body Shop and under the stipulation that you do not sell any cars off that lot?
Well, when you sell cars, I mean, personal vehicles, you're allowed to sell 5 a year.
That's state law, that's not city ordinance. But our city ordinance is, we were told a while ago that it is written in our city ordinance. We really have no way to police that.
I mean, the only reason I'm making this comment is I repossessed my motorhome because I don't have that extra income coming in. If business doesn't pick up in the next 2 months, I'm going to put my boat out there for sale. I mean, it's personal.
Yeah.
But, you know, I just got to do what I got to do. I don't have 2 incomes anymore. So I'm just going to change my play toys.
Right.
That's all I'm saying. I'm going to, you know, just start a different life, more or less start a different life than what I had because I had, you know, 2 businesses, and you can say, so I had extra money to buy play toys.
We have some neighbors to the east of y'all across the highway, and they have complained.
Well, they complained about next door when they used to park cars next door.
Yeah. And I know people complain about a lot of things, and you know, you look and find they'll see something, and then they'll start complaining. They'll complain about something else. I see Mr. Journey's agreeing with me. He said, but if you didn't have your personal toys out there for sale, or if you could, you gave your address as 59 something, didn't you?
5521.
You didn't tell us what your home address was.
Why didn't they want a home?
Would you go ahead at this
I'm
time?
sorry, 4809 Roof Snow Drive.
Okay.
Is it possible? And I'm glad you said Roof Snow Drive because that's another main thoroughfare. That's 5 lanes wide. Is it possible that you could sell your toys from that area, from that property?
Well, I got 4 tickets pending over there too. They're selling my own personal truck.
I'm trying to help you.
I understand that, but it's my personal truck. I have a circle driveway, and the only time I get a ticket is on a weekend. But it's my own personal truck. It's not against the law to sell my own personal truck. She's mailed me 4 of them. I'm going to court over them too. And I'm not trying to run a business out of my house. I'm just trying to sell my truck.
Mr. Levine, I'm trying to get it where you can do paint and body business in the 5500 block of Denton Highway. And if you'll tell me that you will not sell vehicles there, you know, whether it be a toy, a tank, or whatever, a boat, you know, I will try to make a motion to have a conditional use permit to where you can go ahead and do that. But if you keep telling me you're selling this and you're over on Roof Snow and you got 4 tickets over there, you're not giving me a whole lot to work with. So, you know, I need something saying, I would rather have you getting your tickets over in North Richland Hills and fixing your cars over here. I'd rather you make your money over here.
Well, I ain't got no choice but to run the body shop only.
I'll pass to the other council members.
Other members of the council, questions? Councilmember Jennings?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In pre-council, we discussed the possibility, since this is in fact a conditional use permit, that we do have the authority to change the wording of the conditional use permit and make it contingent, make our approval or disapproval contingent upon Mr. Levine's agreement to not sell anything out of that lot other than paint and body business, right, as an accessory. Could this be worded to include, you know, the display of anything in front of the building? Yes, sir. Okay. That's my only question. Thank you.
Members of the council, any further questions or comments before I ask members of the audience if they'd like to speak either for or against this application? Okay, there being none, members of the audience, do we have anyone who would like to speak either for or against Mr. Levine's request for conditional use permit on this property? Okay, there being none, I'll close the public hearing. Mr. Fowler, Congressman. Councilman Fowler.
Whoa.
What a promotion.
Double honorable.
Yeah, how about that? I saw your light is on, and I apologize. That's the second time that happened. It's hidden behind some of the apparatus up here. So,
Skullduggery going on,
Council
yes.
Member Fowler. Yes.
It was just for a motion. Go ahead, Mr. Wood.
No, I'm ready for a motion.
Okay. I'd like to move that we approve CU-005-02 with the stipulations that there be no sale, any at all, of any type of vehicle, whether it be recreational, watercraft, motor vehicle, anything, nor anything displayed in the front of the building line. Is there anything else we need to add to that?
Just a minute. Anything else? We have a motion.
I'd spoken, Mr. Plisk, I believe that's what we had spoken about prior to.
Yes, sir, you could lump that as accessory auto sales.
Okay.
The denial of accessory
Denial
auto
of any accessory auto sales.
Okay, you've heard the motion. I believe Councilmember Markham had his light on first.
Second.
Councilmember Williams.
One clarification, Mr. Pliska. Now, if Mr. Levine does happen to put vehicles or toys or whatever he prefers to call them out for sale, and he is ticketed by the city of Haltom City, does he stand to lose his conditional use permit on that?
Yes, it could come back to council.
So, do you understand that, Mr.
Yeah,
Levine?
I was gonna ask you, what about my personal truck? Is that no longer, or am I still allowed to go try to sell, 'cause I need the money?
No, sir, Mr. Levine, in my motion, I would prefer that there be I would stipulate that there be nothing in front of the property line.
Councilmember Jennings, you had your light on.
That was for the exact same question. I wanted to know.
Okay, any further discussion on the motion before us?
I had one question, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Levine, you had said that you had planned on doing some revisions to your property and possibly bringing this back. Mr. Pliska, could you make him, or could you provide us with information now at what time he would be able to bring this back if he, decided to revise some of the plans of his property?
Mr. Levine, excuse me just a moment. You may be seated if you'd like. We are through with the public hearing and with your presentation, and we're ready now to take some action.
Coming back as an auto sales, so you can't do that.
I ain't gonna do it, period.
At the council meeting where it was denied, where his request for an auto sales facility, he could not come back for another year.
For 1 year?
From that date, yes, sir.
Thank you.
Any further discussion on the motion? Councilmember Fowler, would you restate that motion
Yes, Mayor.
so we are all sure what we're voting on?
Okay. For approval of CU-005-02 in the pending ordinance, that with the stipulation that there be no recreational motor vehicles or any accessory vehicles sold in front of the building line at this address.
Okay, that's the motion we're voting on. If you will, gentlemen, register your vote. And that passes with one no. I want to be sure those in the audience and those who are watching understand what we just did. Our ordinance states in Haltom City that you cannot have an auto sales facility and an auto body shop on the same piece of property, platted on the same piece of property. And that's what was at issue here. Mr. Levine was trying to do both, and you can't do both. You got to choose one or the other. And by the action the council has just taken, Mr. Levine is allowed to continue operating a paint and body shop, but cannot sell any type of vehicle off of that lot. I think we're through now with the public hearings, and we're ready to move to the Visitors and Citizens Forum. We do have 2 visitors' cards that have been filled out, requests to appear before the council. The first is Mr. Bill Jornay. If you would, Mr. Jornay, you have your address as 2710 Moneta Avenue. That is correct. And the subject you wish to speak to us on tonight is the subject of taxes. And you have 5 minutes to address us.
Thank you, Mayor. I have to write all these things down, memory and time. Okay, insurance and government will have a good laugh at this, but some of our taxpayers and seniors won't see it so funny. If you hunt the history of our sales tax, you discover that not only were they once identified as city sales tax, but were designed to put more police...
Mr. Jornet,
Yes.
will you excuse me for just a
Certainly.
moment? And we'll start all over again. Mr. Levine and Mr. Plisk, if y'all have a conversation to conduct, do you mind stepping out in the hall, please? I apologize, Mr.
quite all
Jornet.
right.
Please begin again.
Thank you. If you hunt the history of our sales tax, you discover that not only were they once identified as city sales tax, but were designed to put more police on our streets for our safety and protection. However, most of what it has done has given us more government, controlled environments, instituted programs, more government employees to generally vote against us. With less than half the patrols per population than at the sales tax conception, our very lives are today in jeopardy, daily on highways and in our homes. And at best, we are giving holiday cops. Yet you suck from us up to 8 cents sales tax on the dollar. We are told to have our insurance papers ready, buckle up, shut up, and pay your taxes. Where does it go? Even voting seniors, property owners on fixed incomes are not exempt. Property taxes leap and bound, and you have no intentions on freezing or at least their taxes. Indeed, greed has no allegiance, avarice no morals. Or what exactly have you done for seniors that we had a vote or say in? I don't know of anyone who has voted to pander to or even educate the illegals and our slave trade. Punchline, this is really funny. Now, how many of you will ask for our vote in the next election? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jornet, and I should have clarified this to begin with. During this Visitor Citizens Forum, this is a time set aside for citizens who have business to bring before the council that's not scheduled on the agenda. Because it was not posted in accordance with the open meetings law, the council cannot discuss or debate any issue brought forth at this time, nor can any formal action be taken. The second person who has filled out a card requesting to appear before the council tonight is Juanelle Hanson. Ms. Hanson, if you will come forward, we have your address as 2104 Oakwood, and the subject you wish to address, and if I might read that before you start, to try to get the council to pass an ordinance to cut down trees when damaging others' property. So, Ms. Hanson, if you will begin, you have 5 minutes to address the council
yes,
on
sir.
this subject.
This has been going on for years. I have a neighbor that has trees that's actually turning my house over. And every time I tried to get the city to do anything about it, they would try to help me, but there was no city ordinance against it. So I'm here to try to get an ordinance passed. The trees next door to me has grown under my house, literally lifted it up, and I've had to have 2 new doors put in, replace the sheetrock on one side of it, and all I was ever told was that it was a civil matter. Because Halton City couldn't do anything because there was no city ordinance. But I understand that they do have a city ordinance. If there's anything done to the city property, they have to cut the trees down. And about a year ago, I had to have down the middle of my driveway, I had concrete runners for the driveway. Down the middle, I had to get a big machine called the Ditch Witch and dig that whole thing out. And we cut roots into up to 2 feet in diameter, going across there and going up under my house. It has twisted the foundation, actually twisted it sideways on that end of the house. And we've got but I did get that taken care of. And what the roots didn't tear up with the concrete runners, we did with the Ditch Witch. And we had to clear out all the way to the street, and there's 2 trees the roots are under my house. I've been under there and looked. And it's just, I have had many sleepless nights wondering what am I going to do next. I'm just sit right here after living here for nearly 50 years and let it just destroy my home. And I'm here to see if I could get anything done about it. I felt real relieved after we got the roots cut into in the driveway. Then I had to have a new driveway poured. And then I was thinking, well, it's going to tear that up just shortly because it's going to keep growing. And it's just a matter of time till it's back up under my house. Okay, I've had to have 2 new doors put in. I actually put a 1x2 to fill up a crack where the door opened and where you couldn't see outside. Well, it got to where that didn't even work. I've had to have 2 new doors, the whole face into everything put in to fill up the crack where you can't see outside of my house. It was actually lifting the walls up off of my bathtub. Anyway, I had to replace all the sheetrock in that one side, and I'm out of money. I can't, there's no more repair. I live on Social Security, and there's no more money to repair anything. And I thank you very much, and I hope you can sympathize a little. But you don't know the feeling of going to bed at night wondering, well, what do I do next? They had me so stressed out I didn't know what to do next.
I'll check into that, and I'm going to give you a call back and see what I can find out. I'm not familiar enough with our current ordinances, but I will.
There isn't an ordinance because I've been for 5 years trying to find a city ordinance. About 3 or 4 years ago, I went and talked to the city manager, and he was going to try to do something for me because he went to the city attorney, found out there was no such ordinance. There was nothing, absolutely nothing, that they could do. And all they tell me it's a civil matter. Well, I can't find an attorney that will even take it because they don't know if they have any money they can get out of it or not, and I don't have the money to pay the attorney. And I thank you very much and would appreciate if you do something about it.
Thank you very much. And that was the city manager who mentioned to you a moment ago that he would look into this and get in contact with you. We move now to the next section of our meeting, and that is announcements and events. Councilmember Hurley, I believe you have an announcement.
Mayor, a good friend of mine, Lauren A. Vance, who's on the student council at Haltom High School, asked me to make an announcement, which the student council is sponsoring a memorial brick sale, kind of like what the city did out here in our little patio. There's 2 styles of bricks. I think one style has a total of 16 spaces that you can put any sort of dedication or name on there that you'd like. The other style is more or less for a business logo. And for more information, you could call Laura Myers, M-Y-E-R-S, 817-547-6295. And it's sponsored by Haltom High School Student Council. I have some blanks here if you'd like to pick them up, or you may call Laura Myers for more information. There's no deadline on it. The price of the brick is $30. So all of the alumni of Haltom High, all the ex-buffs might want to invest in it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Hurley. Councilmember Williams, I believe you have an announcement.
Thank you. That'll give Councilmember Markham a second chance to invest in the high school up there. We have a lot of boards and commissions at this time that are lacking members, and we called out for an announcement at the last council meeting. We have some on the Volunteer Service Board, some on the Park Board, and I urge the citizens out there to get involved. If there's someone out there that would like to serve on a board or commission, if you will contact us at area code 817-222-7700 and ask the person to answer the phone up there that you'd like to have an application to serve on a board. We'd like to have you come out and be a part of us, and there's a lot of good work in Haltom City being done right now and a lot of good volunteers we have, and we could use some more. So if you could call that number at 222-7700 and come out and give us a hand and help, we'd appreciate it.
Thank you, Councilmember Williams. Mr. City Manager, I believe you have an announcement to make at this time.
Yes, sir. There's one announcement I'd like to make tonight, primarily for the benefit of the citizens out there listening. I'd like to announce that the city does, in fact, recognize that there's an ongoing mosquito problem Up to now, I think the city of Haltom City has taken a backseat position and just sat back and watched other cities here in the Metroplex and try to figure out what they're going to do to combat the issue. There's been a lot of controversial information out there about whether or not cities should do something to counter the problem, or whether or not they should or should not, even about the effectiveness and or the dangers of some of the chemicals that are being used. I think our position is that although we believe the problem is going to be short-lived, thinking that the rains will soon stop and it'll start drying up and we'll get back into our typical weather patterns for July and August. In the meantime, we've taken the position to go ahead and begin spraying. This evening will be the first spray, and we will probably accomplish about half the city, and tomorrow evening we hope to achieve spraying the remaining half of the city. I think this process should help in some ways, although I don't think there should be an expectation that it's going to remedy the problem entirely. We've also begun experimenting with another process. It's a larvicide. It's briquettes. I have some up here if anybody'd like to see them after the meeting. But these briquettes are thrown out into areas that are known to have standing water in them. And it's going to be real difficult to know how effective they are or have been. And it is the first time the city's ever used these, but nevertheless, we're going to go ahead and use some of these. We have been in the past week or so begun the use of them. I think the one most important thing that I could announce tonight is the most effective measure that we can all do to counter the mosquito problem is to get rid of any standing water that we might have in our yards and keep our grass cuts short. Certainly, anytime you're outside, you should. We would recommend that you use some kind of repellent, especially in the evenings when you're out there, and just help us ride this out. Today was a good indicator that I think we're back into a July weather pattern, hot and dry, and very likely that any standing water, small amounts of standing water that we have out there are going to begin to dry up. So again, we're going to do our part, but we would like to ask the citizens of Haltom City to share and help us, and we'll see what happens. That's all I have, Mayor, Council.
Any further announcements, members of the council? Would you like to take a 5-minute break, or okay? We'll take a 5-minute break and reconvene shortly.
Yeah, we got tomorrow. Ready to go, Mayor?
I'm ready.
Come on, Richard.
Ladies and gentlemen, we'll go ahead and reconvene. We have one council member that'll be on his way shortly. We're come now at 20 minutes till 9. We come to item number 6 on the agenda. Mr. Torres, would you like to introduce item number 6?
Actually, I'll turn this over to our city engineer, Greg Van Nieuwenhuis. Greg.
Good evening. Item number 6 is change order number 2 to a $2.2 million contract for Phase 1 for some sanitary sewer rehabilitation work in the Little Fossil Creek Basin. This change order basically covers 3 items. It covers additional pavement repair necessary on Haltom Road due to the trench being widened than what was envisioned in the contract documents. It includes 68 additional days, and it includes reconnecting services by pipe bursting versus open cut. And those 3 items are at a cost of slightly over $78,000. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Van Nieuwenhuis? Okay, I think we had some pretty good discussion on this, and you'd provided some in-depth documentation in our packet, so we should be very familiar with this. There being no questions, gentlemen, I'm ready to entertain a motion. Councilmember Hurley.
Mayor, I move that we approve change order number 2, sanitary sewer rehabilitation project.
Councilmember Jennings.
For a second.
Have a motion, a second. Any discussion on the motion? There being none, registering our vote shows that passes unanimously. Item number 7.
Item number 7 covers the approval of a resolution adopting a pipeline crossing agreement between the city and the UPR Railroad. This is for the second phase of the Saucer Drive drainage improvements. If you remember, this project was divided into 2 phases. The first phase being work done by the city's forces, and the second phase being work done by an outside contractor. That work specifically being the design of the construction of a storm drainage facility underneath the UPR Railroad tracks. In order to do that, staff has negotiated with the UPR Railroad for approximately a year to get an agreement that we feel that we can bring to you for adoption. We had the UPR's railroad attorneys tone down some of the hold harmless clauses and some of the notification clauses. And the last thing that we were able to get from the UPR was the exchange of, instead of using stainless steel pipe for a storm drainage structure, they're allowing us to use a 6x4 reinforced concrete box, which is much more cost effective.
Any questions? Councilmember Markham?
No questions, Mayor. You're in line for a motion.
Okay. Councilmember Williams, did you have a question?
I just got one brief question, Mr. Van Nuys. This second phase here, this goes back probably a year and a half ago or so when we had water we're getting in the houses over on Saucer. Will this pretty well eliminate the problem with that, or?
Yes, up to, I think, a 25-year rain event, which is the common rain event that we designed for. So, where right now I think those people are experiencing water into their homes or up to their homes somewhere on a 5-year frequency. And they'll no longer experience it at that nature. Obviously, if we have like a 25 or a 50-year rain event, they will probably still have some water up to their front yards, but it'll be a much more improvement over what they have now.
What we did in the first phase, though, that's pretty well. We haven't really had a problem over there in the last 15, 18 months, have we?
No, since we've installed it, I'm not aware of any problems. However, with the recent rain events that we've had this spring, it has brought a concern back with the property owners, and they have called inquiring on the status of this next phase.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Markham, I believe we're ready for that motion.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that we pass resolution number 2002-024-16.
Councilmember Henderson?
That's for a second.
Councilmember Hurley?
That was for a second.
Okay, any discussion on the motion to approve? There being none, registering our vote, passes by unanimous vote. Item number 8, Mr. Torres, you want to introduce this while the gentleman is coming forward?
Mr. Pat Elfrink, our finance director, will deliver our monthly financial report to council and the citizens.
Thank you, Mr. Manager, Mayor, Council. What you have is the financial report that gives a top-level summary for the entire city for the month ending June 30th, 2002. I will just comment briefly on this report. If you have specific questions, please go ahead and ask them of me. We do continue to monitor very closely some of the major revenue sources for the general fund, such as sales tax, and as I mentioned earlier at the pre-council, the monthly return for the most recent month, for the month of May, for the past 3 years, it was the lowest of the past 3 years, but just the month before that, for the month of April, it was the highest month of April return that we had received in the past 3 years. So that gives you an indication of how difficult it is to try and forecast that particular revenue. We do have some other revenue sources in the general fund that are performing ahead of expectations. That is helping to offset some of the problems that we're experiencing with the sales tax. In the other major fund, the water fund, as everyone is generally aware, we have received more rainfall this year than we normally would have in this far into the summer. So our water revenues are down a little bit thus far, but the good part of that particular fund is if we're not selling the water, we're also not buying it from the source that we buy it from. Other than that, I don't have anything else in particular on this particular report. If there are any questions, I'll be glad to try and answer them.
Questions for Mr. Elfrink? Don't believe we have any questions. I want to, again, thank you for all the work you and your department go to put these together on a monthly basis. I know at one time these were coming quarterly, and this is quite a bit more work for you, but it's very informative to us to be able to keep up on a month-to-month basis. And I looked that over pretty closely today and very pleased with what I see. Haltom City seems to be very healthy financially, and we're glad to see we have good principles in place and good accounting and really watching and using the taxpayers' money efficiently. So to the city manager and the finance director and others responsible, we're deeply appreciative of that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Our pleasure.
Do we need to take action to approve this financial report?
That is correct. Yes.
Okay, I'm in line for a motion to approve the financial report. Councilmember Williams.
Move to approve the report as given by the finance director.
Councilmember Jennings.
For a second.
Councilmember Fowler.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion, a second. Any discussion on the motion? You will register your votes, and that passes unanimously. And the next item, Mr. Torres.
Next item is our monthly capital improvement status report, and Mr. Tom Muir, our Director of Administrative Services, will deliver this, as he does every month.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Before I get started, I just wanted to remind y'all that this report is available currently on the internet on our website. If you want to go to that, or the citizens want to go to it, they can get that there now. And one thing that wasn't pointed out in the pre-council is that the agenda on our website now is kind of revised a little bit to where there's links to get all the supporting documents for each of the agenda items. So that's something our citizens can get more of. They can see the maps, the aerials, and stuff that you guys currently have in your packets. They can get that off the internet as well.
Great.
Just to hit a few highlights from the CIP. Carson, last council meeting, you folks approved a couple of change orders. Contractor's back on the job now, and that work is progressing. The sanitary and sewer and storm drainage conflicts on the west end and concrete boxes on the north end. Broadway, as much a mess as that is, it is progress. It is progress, strangely enough. And the contractor has recently started sewer work on the north end of the street. But the citizens are asked to indulge us when we get calls quite a bit on that thing. And it's going to be, it's on schedule, but it's going to be a painful process. Street reconstruction projects, the Lindsay, Revere, and Roxy, those things are progressing in the design phase, and those things, the bids should be issued in October, with construction starting at the end of the year. Jerry and Mona, very early in the project, are only about 10% complete. Jerry, we've already started laying the water lines on Jerry. For Catalpa, the city has finished their portion of it, the water and sewer work. We're waiting on TXU Gas to move their line. After that, Marpave, who has got the contract through Tarrant County, will lay the street sometime in August or September, but that's through CDBG funds administered through the county. The milling and overlay projects, last report I gave you, they would be complete in July. Because of all the wet weather, they're not going to be complete in July. It's been pushed off a few weeks, so hopefully it'll be complete next month. In the North Beach and 820 Frontage Road, construction hasn't technically started. The contractor has mobilized, though. They're out there on the site. Hopefully they'll be starting turning dirt probably by the end of the month. But as you recall, we had a groundbreaking last month, and we're very anxious to get going on that. As far as drainage, the Big Fossil Creek channel improvement project, haven't had a lot of progress in that, visible progress, but the staff is working with the engineer and the contractor trying to correct the drainage flume issue. It's something we're still working on. We're making progress towards that, but it's nothing that the citizens can see visually there, but we are working on that. Saucer Drive, just a couple items ago, you approved the pipeline agreement with the railroad. As far as sanitary sewer, the only item I want to draw attention to was the drainage basin project, the phase of that. Bids were just recently opened last week. We thought the project, the engineer's estimate was about $3.5 million. Low bid was about 2.7. They ranged anywhere from 2.7 to 3.5. So we're very pleased with the bids we've got, and hopefully we'll be bringing something to the next council meeting to award that. In the building projects, the public works facility that was presented to you last month, as far as the plans and schematics. Hopefully those things will be. Those things are still tracking to be issued next month, with construction starting in October, as well as the rec center that was also presented to you last month, and those are also tracking for the same timeline. Central Fire Station, we saw a presentation last month, and those plans are still going on as scheduled. Hopefully it'll be issued in, say, October, sometime in the fall, but about October we'll issue bids for that and start construction probably by the end of the year. Other than that, that is all the highlighted items that I want to point out in this report. And again, this thing is available. Copies are available here at City Hall or on the website.
Members of the council, questions or comments on this report? Councilmember Fowler.
Mr. Mayor, if you would, you said that they'd remobilized on Carson Street.
Yes, that's right.
Are they planning south end, headed north, or would you kind of give me a directive on which?
I'm not in a position to answer that, sir.
Greg can answer that.
I thought you were going to defer to that, but just for the sake of our citizenry.
Sure. Real quick, on Carson, we had 5 locations on the west side at intersections where the sanitary sewer was going to conflict with the new storm drain. They are starting on the south end, working to the north. The intent being that if they get far enough north, like maybe Midway, that we can start with paving contractor coming in. However, I don't want to mislead you. You won't see pavement right off the bat. You'll see subgrade preparation and subgrade stabilization, then the asphalt, and then the concrete. And that is the intention for him to be able to start on the south and get a big, healthy chunk going to the north. At the same time, the reinforced concrete box has come in, and the city is putting that in on the north end at Belknap, and we'll be working about 170 foot south of Belknap. So, and we'll be doing that. We're doing that now, and like I said, at the same time, those conflicts on the west side are being resolved.
Looked like the city had started making pretty good progress on that, on the box culvert, but what would be a fair, assuming, you know, not having any inclement weather that's unreasonable, just a ballpark that they might
Actually see some like real pavement,
possibly paving?
end of August, early September.
So say 1st of September should be fairly
Right.
safe.
So,
Okay.
and that's again if the weather cooperates.
Okay. Thank you all very much.
Councilmember Williams.
Mr. Muir, you mentioned the website a while ago. You didn't share the website address with the citizens when you did that. You might want. And I understand that y'all have done quite a bit of work on that. And I've been watching it the last few weeks. There's been a lot of major changes in it, and I'd like to compliment you and the people that worked on that, along with your report here.
Sure.
I know I call up here at 10 o'clock at night, you're still here, so somebody's doing it. But I think y'all are doing a super job on it. I really appreciate this report. And one question we brought up earlier in the mosquito report, we have had a lot more rain than what we normally have, but the type of rain we've had has really not had much effect on any of these projects, has it?
Outside of the overlays, and I'm not going to say it hasn't had any effect on it, but the timelines are so stretched out on a lot of these projects that it hasn't materialized yet as far as where they've asked for weather days or rain days. And we haven't had anything. The overlays or the overlay projects are the projects that are immediately coming up due. But we could very well see some change orders later on in consideration of these past month.
Thank you,
sir.
Mr. Muir, I had a question, maybe it's more of a comment. I'm very glad to see this report coming out to us each month. We have a lot of things going on in Haltom City, as you know, trying to stay on top of all of them. And as time goes on over the next year, 2, 3 years, we're going to have a lot more going on. And these kind of reports that are available to the elected officials who are trying to make good decisions, and to staff, and to the people of Haltom City, that communication is critical to a good feeling in the community. I know going down Broadway every day and going down Carson Street, it's easy to get frustrated, and particularly with Carson because it's been ongoing for such a long time. But that's part of the price for progress. We're doing some catch-up in Haltom City, and over the next few years, we're going to see some good things. And these reports that you bring to us and make available to the public, not only in council meetings, but also on the website, is very, very helpful. So thank you for your time and effort in this regard.
You're welcome.
Anything further for Mr. Muir? Councilmember Williams, I believe item number 10, towing practices and policies, is one you had asked to be placed on the agenda. Would you like to introduce that at this time, please?
Yes, sir. I placed this on the agenda, and then after speaking with the city attorney and chief of police, there's a ordinance in the process of being drawn up. So if it's agreeable with the council, I'd like to remove that at this time until we can see the ordinances drawn up between and let us have a chance to look at that. What do you think?
Are you making a motion to remove it?
Yeah, that was the motion, yes, sir.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to move this item number 10 forward to the next meeting. Those in favor, are those against? If you will register your vote, and that passes by unanimous vote. Item number 11 is resignation of board members. Members of the council, any action that we need to take in this area? Councilmember Jennings.
Mr. Mayor, I was informed earlier today that I now have a vacancy on the park board. Mr. Joe Bentley, I have not received a written resignation from him, but I understand he no longer lives in Haltom City. So I'll be checking into that, and if anyone out there would be interested in serving on the park board, we sure would like to see an application.
Is this a resignation you'd like to ask the council to ratify at this time?
I think until I actually confirm that Mr. Bentley no longer lives in Haltom City, I'd just like to let that ride to the next meeting, but I certainly would like to solicit any applications possible.
Thank you. Any other resignations? Appointments or reappointments? Okay, I have 3 to make tonight to the Haltom City Housing Authority Board, and these are actually reappointments. Earl Hall, Bertha Roden, Pauline Wright. These 3 individuals have served in that capacity for some time. They're doing a great job. They would like to continue, and with your ratification, we can move forward with that. So if you would, that shows 100% ratification of these appointments. Item number 13 is moot tonight because all elected officials are present, and with that, the council will move at this time into executive session pursuant to section 551.071 and .074, and will reconvene here to take any action regarding any items to be discussed in executive session.